Hello, welcome back to the Inner. Today I have with me my brother Orikoku Obalafia.
Peace and blessings. Peace.
Hey, my brother, how you doing?
Good. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Let's see. So, if you could introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what it is that you do and what it is that you're a part of.
Um, my name is Orikoku Obalafia. I was born Lee Johnson, which is my father's name and his father's name. He's originally from Georgia, uh, uh, by way of Brooklyn, New York, meeting my mother, who was from Puerto Rico and Santo Domingo. Her meeting my father in Brooklyn, New York. I'm the product of Afro Latino and African American household. And that right there set the stage for me in spirituality. Uh, my mother, my mother's family, uh, worshiping or reverencing traditional West African deities, and of course my father's side more so being into church, what have you. So growing up, I was a mixture of the two. At some point, when I didn't have my father as a representative of what an African American man should be, or what African culture is, I was left to find it on my own. So this is my journey with what's called Lukumi, Afro Caribbean. Some people say, which we know come from the Yoruba, from Benin, and from the Fan and various West African tribes. I just named a whole bunch of names to say because truly we're not from one tribe. I mean, I know a lot of people feel that way. I do. I prefer Yoruba West African culture because I grew up hearing it. It's normal to me. But you might like Ghana and the Akan. I don't feel that vibe, but it doesn't mean I disagree with it. I don't know their proverbs. I don't know what the language sounds like. But if I hear somebody speak Yoruba, I can identify with that easier. So I involved myself in that. Um, in the '90s, at least in New York City in hip hop culture, we were very conscious, and so it's normal to see a rapper wearing an African garb and head crown with a big gold chain. You know what I'm saying? And it was hip to be knowledgeable and tough, streetwise at the same time. So I'm thankful that I had that in the beginning to influence me. Um, I got in trouble when I was 9. I ended up going into a home for 3 years, and those were horrible times for me. And the only thing I had to fall back on is what I knew from hip hop was that I came from some type of divine culture that taught me about something great was within me. Other than that, you can get treated like crap, in the streets, um, going through boys' homes, being mistreated by staff and other children. So I battled with that for a long time. And kind of to fast forward to the future, uh, not to the future, but not too long ago, I met a man who was honest about adverse childhood experiences. He was able to sit down and be honest enough to tell me that I had been traumatized when I was a kid, and that in fact uh, I had normalized dysfunctional behavior. He kind of let me know I see through you. You're making an excuse because of what you've been through. You have to done that to survive, but now you're old enough to accept accountability. It's not about your mom or what she did to you or how your father left you. It's about what are you going to do now that you know better. And this was a wake up call because somebody actually called my bluff. Somebody who was Sicilian, who was a professional, told me, I see through you. You do have some issues, but you've become a manipulator.
Mm-hmm.
That was a hard blow, but it was a wake up call for me to address my issues, for me not to look at this as a culture, but a way of healing, and to find my healing through my culture. So now I began to try to understand the proverbs and the wisdom of what I was hearing people talking about, and why was I wearing something on my head that represented a culture? What was divine within me? When you have low self-esteem, the last thing you do is feel divine. And so I had to grip with how come I don't feel divine? Why do I feel like I'm a mistake or a mess up. And those are conversations that start with inside first. And so today, I became a minister. I was kind of nominated to become a Baba in the community. Um, I promote people getting comfortable with who they are first, because wherever you go, there you are. You take yourself with you, and so, and that within itself is the start to everything. I think, I
That's
think I
pretty
summed my
cool.
life up.
Yeah, you said a lot of powerful things just that fast. I've heard Infandishi say something similar where he says that culture is your medicine.
Yes, definitely. I've met Ifram DC on 125th Street very often. Um, very often. I met him a lot. I had him autograph the book, Warriors Are Healers,
Hmm.
which helps us out because there's nothing soft about healing. There's nothing soft about being able to look at all the things you don't accept within yourself, the things that you might not share with your brother that he's probably going through as well. That's warrior work, and that's really where it starts. So I
Hmm.
appreciate that sentiment.
Yeah. So you've talked about kind of learning how to overcome these psychological barriers, these, let's just say, these impartations that you just received over your childhood. That's the best way I know how to say it right now. Um, and learning how to eventually recognize what happened, accept it as that, and then learn how to no longer let that rule you.
Hmm.
Could you talk a bit about that for someone who might still find themselves in a state of letting what happened still happen through them, letting their past shape their future?
Definitely, definitely. Excuse me, my allergies are acting up. Um, I'm sitting in front of trees while it's raining at the same time, but I'm enjoying the view. And that starts with me um, having what is called like intrusive or overwhelming thoughts. Understanding that at a real young age, being put in a home when I was 9, I never learned to process my thoughts fully, and that I had an issue, and that I needed to speak to somebody professionally, because sometimes going to your homeboy or family member is not the best thing to do because they don't have the answers. So for me, the awakening call, um, I was really hard on myself. So for me, initially, what the Buddha taught, or Dharma, and having compassionate acceptance of my thoughts, that they weren't going to go away, that I had to kind of confront them, maybe make friends with them because they weren't going anywhere, and realize that who I am and how I have become to be is not the same. I'm going to slow down with that and get tongue tied. I know there's a conditioned self, a child who was taken away from his mother and had to develop all type of negative traits to survive. That's not who I was. It's like a mask, like persona means mask. I had become something that I wasn't comfortable with, and it was a challenge between the two. So maybe in meditation, you call that the I, and the me would be the conditioned self. The conditioned self was all the negative thoughts that continually came to me about how I wasn't crap, how I keep messing up. And it was a continuous thought loop. And the only thing that could stop that truly was meditation. And not stop that, but help me to allow it to see that it's not me. And then if I let it go, eventually it will stop coming. I don't know if that's too deep, that makes sense, but when you overthink a lot, it can take a hold of your life. Even just to get up in the morning before you go to work, you have to talk to yourself. And I had to really learn how to address the self critic. My formula right now is true and kind, which relates to my app for me, which is, my spin on it and the way I see it. Uh, Being perfectly balanced is when I receive a lot of thoughts in the morning. I might say, you too old to be going to a job where you're wasting your time. I might get a thought like that. It might be somewhat true, but I might not need to be hard on myself this morning. I still need to go get 15 hours. I ask myself, is it true? Uh, it's based on a point of view. Is it kind? That's not kind. That's not something that I would say to a friend going to work in the morning. So I don't allow those thoughts to overwhelm me. I don't entertain them. I don't feed them. They're not of me. And I'm pretty sure, a brother like you can find that passage in the Bible where it talks about what type of thoughts not to entertain. Anything that holds you down and binds you and tears you apart is not for you. And
Yeah.
so it's taken a lot of years to say that that practice has really worked for me, has kept me accountable. I don't blame anybody for my position, and it's something that I can share with your average person. The average person at work is stressed out and they sitting there thinking. Somebody who smokes, drinks, or gets on any type of stimulant, chances are being visited by negative memories, harmful thoughts, and they
Yeah,
really
it's an
just
escape.
want to. Yes, sir. It's an escape, and so the escape is real, and the escape is part of the journey that we're all on. I hope I answered the question with that.
Yeah, you're doing good.
Okay.
So, um, I've heard a quote before, and this kind of goes along with what you're saying, where he said that you may be able, you can't stop the birds from flying over a tree, but you can stop them from building a nest.
Ooh.
In that it's about what thoughts you choose to let take root and which ones you choose, hey, that can't stay here.
Yeah, I can't nest. There's certain things that I can't allow to nest and to carry with me. You know, because then you get pooped on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I like that one a lot because birds, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. You can't control them.
Yeah.
But what you hold on to and what you build and add on to is something different.
Yeah. And I believe like that goes into like a concept that I've taught on as far as like soul health is that physically we clean our bodies daily, or at least we should be. We
Yes,
take
sir.
a shower, we take a bath at least daily. And I often ask people, I'm like, how often do you clean your soul? They're like,
Mm.
what you mean? Okay, never is the answer I just got. So most of the time people are battling stuff because they have not cleaned up their soul in any significant way. Oftentimes, never ever. Meaning they're carrying on the filth that they picked up 10 years ago, 20 years ago, stuff that happened when they was a kid, not because it has to be a part of them, but because they haven't gotten that filth off of them yet. And that's why I like that you mentioned meditation helping, because I've often I somewhat prescribed meditation as a part of soul cleaning. Is that if we take in a bath every day or a shower every day to clean our body, meditation should be a daily thing to keep our mind clean, to keep our soul clean.
It definitely is so, and I think most people disagree with meditation, or they have a problem with it because they believe you need to sit somewhere and hum and meditate and like leave your body. But it could be something as simple as paying attention to your thoughts, not allowing your mind to head in that direction this morning. And every morning getting up and making sure to set your attentions, not allowing the mind to run free, which is a problem. The mind is supposed to be controlled and harnessed and guided and directed, not allowed to run rapidly, run around, run amok.
Yeah. So shifting over just a little bit, um, mention that you're more comfortable with like what'd you say, West African?
West African, what we call it Isheshe or Isheshe Lagba would be the ancient tradition, which deals more with Iwalewa, which is character is beauty, and Omoluwabi, which is a person of high character. So traditional, for me, what I focus on is the values and the things that makes one upright, things concerning the heart being the center of being, which goes to Kemet and the Shabbat Castile and Ptah and how we create our universe from our heart and our words. And so we find that concept in Ishe Shelagba as well. Iwalewa, character is beauty. And overall, if you're not dealing with that from the beginning, what type of spiritual journey are you really on? We have to ask these questions.
Mm,
Because sometimes people think they don't have to change, they have to just change the name and go through ceremonies and rituals. But it really starts with the heart. And I think that we discussed that, we'll definitely be here for years to come.
yeah. I definitely believe that heart first, because I understand the heart is the thing that actually pushes that genetic information throughout the rest of the body.
Mhm.
In that, whatever the quality of the heart is, the rest of the body is going to be.
Yes, sir.
So even like you're talking changing on a heart level, once it's there, it's everywhere.
Yes, sir.
It's like it's one thing, kind of like being in religion, how it was behavior reinforcing, it was changing behavior without changing a heart. So you have something that's still the old thing trying to do something new rather than being something new altogether.
It talked about new wine and old skin. You remember that
Yeah.
parable and how they
Yeah.
burst? Definitely. And we have a lot of people who just want to be in groups and want to be a part of organizations, but don't want to do the work. And you can kind of tell the difference from someone who's actually doing this work and they're working on their character and they could apologize and they could point out when they're wrong. Um, some folks don't understand that it takes an inner process, like a changing. That's what it's really about. Um, Sometimes I think we confuse it with just saying things that we don't understand and repeating, concepts. Um, I got sidetracked with that, but um,
Yeah. So leaning back into the culture, if you could give us like a brief overview for people who may be unfamiliar with that specific culture.
oh wow, okay. Uh,
Or you could or talk about it as much as you want, to be honest.
yeah, the overview for me would be from our perspective. Um, that a lot of our ancestors did come from West Africa. Some people disagree with that. Most of us know that. I think the Yoruba people, for some reason, have the most identifiable influence in the West Indies. The Orishas, um, even in Brazil, you have Candomblé. Um, Cuba, Puerto Rico, you have what's called Lucumia Santeria. Dominican Republic, you have something called Sanises, and we all have a culture where we use beads and we use personification of forces of nature. And we all have a binary divination system. The fact that that survived hundreds of years and that we still practice it, I think, says a lot. And so for me, that impressed me the most. Also, is that this divination system is found in some of our Sufi Islamic practices. Of course, they don't really sacrifice animals. I might not get into some things West African traditions do, but among the Sufi, there's a binary coded system that shows that our modern day computer is based on the binary system. And Africans, for thousands of years, has had this form of mathematics where there was receiving yes and no answers, kind of like a prehistoric computer. And so those are the things I like to focus on, are kind of spiritual technologies and things that we can use and make sense as a people.
So
That'd be my take.
so what would you say is the concept of God in that culture?
Um,
Um
Olodumare, the word I know for God, Olodumare, Olodoni. Olodu means owner of the Odu, and Odu is like a black pot or black container, which actually the 16 Odus are the what they call the divination principles they use. Somebody who's more religious might say holy Odus, might say gateways. They might say you need to sacrifice to each one. There's 16, which is 256 times 256. Infinite pairs multiplying. There's mathematics behind it. There's some of us who focus on that more. There's some who focus more on spiritual principles. You got to make a donation. You might have to sacrifice a chicken or a goat. I seen that as a child, and I don't lean towards that system. To me, the fact that we practice a binary system of divination thousands of years before anybody else is more impressive. Um, so, what was your question? What was your question again?
so uh pretty much just talking about the concept of God itself in that
There
culture.
we go. Okay. Olodumare means owner of the Odu. which is like an ever expanding pot, can be the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Dumare, I believe, means expansion. So it's pretty much saying owner of the expanding universe, which is my poor translation, but it's what makes the most sense to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not into things that don't make sense just because they feel good spiritually. We know the universe contracts and expands. A definition clearly given by some Babalawas is owner of the expanding and contracting universe. So I believe that God is a force, impersonal force. Human beings, we strive, we make up these concepts like angels, gods, forces of nature are actually real, but we personify them because
Mm-hmm.
we need to understand what they are. They're going to exist whether we understand them or not. We personify them, we give them names and numbers and colors, and we've always done that. So I'm open to learning from different people, but I choose my own. And so with the Yoruba system, Olodumare, Olojoani means owner of the day, is an impersonal force that exists in the universe. The Orishas are kind of like, well, first you have the Iramole, which are the immortals who are in heaven, they never come to earth. Only the Orishas, which we know for the most part, come to earth, have stories, and interact with us. Some would say that human beings become Orishas, which makes sense because energy is never created nor destroyed. So when your soul leaves and your body hits the earth and turns into manure and what have you, where does the soul really go? What does it turn into? Some of our system teach us that it goes far to the universe, the cosmos, goes back home. Whatever you believe in is personifying the forces of nature. And I think the Yoruba people, the conglomeration of West African tribes called Yoruba, they personify that the best. Any Orisha, like Shango is thunder, Oya is winds, Yemaya
Emoja
is the water.
water.
Right. These are things that actually exist. We personify them because they're sacred and they're living. So what our tradition is saying that these things are living beings, and we should honor them because we are them and they are us. That is found all throughout the board in Africa. Only these new traditions that we've accepted recently, where we don't honor the forces of nature, and that's bugged out.
Yeah. Seems like as humans started to care less about nature and stopped honoring nature and creation as a whole, seems like creation started to reject humanity as a whole.
I agree with your sentiment. I see that, and I feel like now. Remember, we had times and rituals where we appropriated the earth, where we like asked for forgiveness. Sometimes I just want to go to a park and just sit down and pray and commune with the earth. Like I don't know if this feels crazy or not, but I really hope you don't kick us up off the earth. Like what if the earth decides to shake us up off the earth?
Yeah. There was a movie I watched, well, it came out forever ago, but it's Kingsman, and it was the first one. And one of the plot lines is that because they noticed that the earth was kind of treating humanity as a disease, thus trying to get rid of it, the response that they came up with, the solution they came up with was to decrease the population so that it would be like it's killing a disease before the earth tries to kill the disease.
Oh wow, that's deep.
So I guess the way we solve that is to stop being a disease.
Yeah, and that would and that would start with African traditions because we're the only ones that have traditions where we don't use terms like black and white really. Like we know that we're all human beings, and so we want to have real talk about oppression and making some powerful moves. I'm an African, you might be a European, you might be an Asian. We're all members of humanity. We all have land and resources. At times, we're gonna fight over them, but we should never try to wipe each other out. We should never think that the Creator made one stronger and better than the other one. That's not the type of Creator we acknowledge. We all live on planet Earth. We know that the sun is the deity, something divine. The sun shines on all of us. So we don't have this concept of other than. We have this concept of which has hurt us. but we see all as one. And so I don't see us stop being a disease until we understand the strain of humanity that we all share.
Yeah, because even in that last sentiment, I've heard people say that one of the biggest issues in the black community is that they're too forgiving, that they don't hold grudges enough in comparison to other cultures.
I, I'm gonna
um,
use something else. I think folks are just soft.
yeah.
I think forgiving has to do with spiritual maturity, and
Hmm.
we're not spiritually mature. We just know that we ain't gonna do nothing about it. Even if I decide to fight, half the block ain't gonna help me if I stand up for what's right. There's too many people get money doing what's wrong, and so um, I don't think we're forgiving. I think we're docile. I've
Yeah.
been in, yeah.
So leaning back in a bit more, um, how would you define? You've used the term a lot. I just want to hear your definition on it. How would you define the word divination?
So I was just researching this last night. Divination, from the term, has to deal with. Uh, there's another term for it. Divination has to deal with your relationship with the earth, or seeking knowledge or wisdom from the earth. There's a tool or prong that people use. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Uh, I won't get on that. Divination is a way of interacting with the earth, communicating with nature to get responses. Um, I believe there's some divination that has to deal with the heavens that's not earth based. I thought the divination is earth based. Um, that would be, my definition of it.
Okay. So, um, I've heard you. You said it a bit earlier that you're a Baba or an elder in a certain community. I believe one of your names is Baba Nefertim.
Yes, yes. For a minute, I was trying that on.
If you could talk about Nefertim a little bit, because I don't typically hear a lot on that specific netter.
Definitely. Nefertem is the son of Ptah and Sekhmet. Nefertem is a beautiful story because the term Nefer uh, describes what beauty is. It's a medu, where it's the union of a trachea and the heart. And to me, my favorite definition or the wisdom I get from that is when one speaks to the heart, it's a thing of beauty. Being that Nefertem is the son of Ptah, Ptah created existence from his heart through his words. His son is a beautiful creation. So I think beauty, which is part of my ministry, I'm giving a lot of that away today. Beauty is what we're made from. We're made to be beauty, to unfold like a lotus from within out. Um, when you speak words from the heart, that means first of all you're in the right place. If it's coming from inside with you, and it's true, and it's balanced, and it's beautiful, and it creates great things. So Nefertem is the son of Ptah and Sekhmet, and Nefertem is. I don't think it's spoken about as much as because we don't equate beauty with masculinity,
Hmm.
and I think that being beautiful is being strong and bold. I think a brother like Khalid Muhammad was beautiful. There's different types of beautiful, and so Nefertem, also called Atem, deals with, to me, human beings. Um, Ptah is the creator of the universe and brings all things into being. So his first son is a thing of beauty. And my paradigm is that all human beings are born beautiful. We stray from the path, we accept ugliness growing up, but we all have this beautiness inside that we can procreate that beauty. You know, if we're in proper alignment. Which,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
It's like Nefertim has become one of my favorite netters, just as I've begin to like, even in contrasting the difference between Nefertum and a tomb, even though they're the same thing, is that
Hmm.
the way that I've seen it, for one, I've seen Nefertum as kind of like the precursor to what would later be called like a Buddha in the Asian cultures, because it's the lotus that is bloomed and blossomed.
Yeah.
It's come up out of the darkness. It steps into this perfection. And I also see that as the difference between tomb and Nefertomb is that every person on the planet is a tomb.
Yes, sir.
Those who awaken are Nefertomb. In
Yes, sir.
that it's the difference between being blooded, it being budded, and then being fully blossomed. Is
Touching
the
on,
way.
yeah,
So I kind of like that. Like it's the consciousness that really releases that beauty. It's the beauty that which is inner now on the outside. It's on full display now.
yes, sir. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I didn't want to get into the Buddha stuff, but I definitely learned from the Buddha first. And it's interesting when you see the symbol of the newborn child, Haru Pakart, they call it, coming from the lotus. You have Nefertum coming from the lotus, and you have Sakyamuni Buddha, or the wise enlightened one, coming from the lotus, showing how these two cultures were connected.
Yeah, even Naja, one of theirs, one of the other deities in Chinese culture, is born from the lotus.
Really beautiful meanings. Beautiful meanings.
Yeah. So, what has been your encounters with Buddhism, or let's just say, what are some of the puzzle pieces you've taken from? I'm assuming you've kind of at least studied it a little bit.
I've studied it a lot. In fact,
Yeah.
when I first wanted the Buddha ring done, I went to Baba Haru Patar because I've seen a lot of similarities with Patar and the Buddha, but I couldn't scholastically I couldn't link them together. But um, during the time in my life where I needed the most healing, I had to learn compassion from the Dhamma, which is what the Buddha's teachings are called, the Dhamma. And I practiced Pali Dhamma, which I still do very much so. I had actually a show called Urban Buddha Dhamma because it was straightforward. Um, as I said earlier, I dealt with a lot of negative memories and thoughts. And so metta meditation was something that was very powerful for me. So much that I kind of separated it and I practiced it so long. Let's say, for instance, I'll get up in the morning and I might be mad at a family member. I might be mad at somebody at work. The minute I'm consciously awakened, I'm consciously woke, I start forgiving people. I start sending them energy, positive energy. I start not ice grilling them, which I'm known to do. It look like I'm angry, but I'm not. But when I want to give you a dirty look, I'm real good at it. And
Hmm.
you don't want that type of energy in the workspace. But first of all, you have to create that energy from within yourself. In order for me to give somebody a dirty look, I have to generate that dirty, disagreeable energy from within myself. And so I started the day by forgiving people I had a problem with the day before, eventually working with people who, for years, I didn't like them and I didn't want to forgive them. Maybe even reaching far to a family member I've never forgiven. That'll be the hardest part. But I wake up in gratitude for life. I wake up forgiving folks and starting my day on that note. And so the method teaching is actually starting with a small circle of forgiveness, starting with forgiving yourself. I should have
Hmm.
started with that because I'm hard on myself often and I'm not happy with my position in life. And that could be anybody with a sense of self. You might not be happy where you're at. I tend to like beat myself up, like throw blows, black my eye up, and put myself in the dump. And one of our teachings in the Sibait or Kemet teachings is not to allow yourself to become depressed, saying that you have a choice and you have a will. So back to Metta and the Buddha, man, just having compassion for myself and making that a practice and then doing it for other people. So when I seen them, the energy was actually removed. I decided, I made it in my will not to have a problem with you, not to entertain that energy, and to do it every day as soon as I awaken. I learned that from the Buddha. I learned that at a time where real rap, I wanted to kill some people in my life. I had to find out that one of my daughter was molested. It's actually the first time I'm talking about it. I found out my daughter was molested, I had called some people to get some weapons and some guns. I was all about that. That was the easiest thing to do, is to take anger out on somebody. But it was my own pain of not being able to protect her and being hurt for her and wanting to hurt somebody else. Someone had to tell me, if you do this to these people, you're going to remove yourself. You're not going to have freedom to help her and be there for her. You're going to go to jail. You're going to die. So you can either go seek revenge and justify her name, your name, whatever it is you think you're doing, but you got to deal with the pain that's within inside you first. And of course, with my daughter. So I literally came to the Buddha because I was kind of fed up with deistic religions. I wasn't bringing nothing to God. I wasn't praying about this. I was going to kill something if I didn't learn to forgive myself for not being there and to not live with hate and accept living with hate. The hardest part was not to accept living with hate. And I got that from the Dharma and how he taught about suffering and holding and clinging on. And so, sadhu, sadhu to the Buddha and the Dharma, because that's where I got my real healing from.
Yeah, that's powerful story. um then in a way that kind of reminds me of a little bit what we were kind of touching on a bit but didn't go too deep into, which is like holding that stuff in.
Yeah.
Like, even the way that I've understood the idea of communing with ancestors, or even what some people call generational curses, just from a genetic or scientific perspective, like understanding that the body itself is a computer. Our whole body is a bunch of computers. Like, we keep talking about nanotechnology. We are nanotechnology. Every cell in our body is like a different robot that is made to receive or release a certain amount of information. So dealing with things on a soulish level, getting it out of your psyche is one thing, but getting it out your cells is another thing. In that, until certain information is out of your encoding, it'll constantly come up because it'll be being produced from the inside.
I'm so glad
So
you touched on that.
being conscious with your thoughts, like we were talking about earlier, is like that'll help you control yourself, but it won't stop certain things from popping up. It's like think of it like having multiple like cell towers or radio towers built into every cell in your body,
Receiving
and
all
they're
the
all
information.
releasing a certain message. And that, even like I said, that's how I've understood the communing with ancestors thing, where they're like, your ancestors are a part of you. It's that genetically you carry a cell tower on the inside of you that comes from one of your distant relatives, and it
Oh,
bears some of the record of who they were and what they knew.
yes, sir. Epigenetics. I forgot that we spoke on that on the phone, and epigenetics, and the fact that, if you know you have a grandmother, a grandfather, a great grandfather that's been through some trauma, chances are they passed that along to you. I was hearing recently about these electrical impulses, that what thoughts are ultimately, that the brain is dark. The brain is inside the skull. The brain actually sees nothing, and it is experiences in these electrical impulses. But if you don't let them out and express them, I believe that's what we're passing on in our genetics. Like these towers you're talking about, your great grandmother's traumatic thoughts are still within you. You might think it's you, and it's not even you, but you are your ancestors. You can't beat it. You can't run from it. And so that's a
Yeah.
powerful bill.
Yeah. So I even think of it as like so I forget what they call it, but I've heard the term something like a lineage breaker. The curse breaker in the family is the one who actually heals for the people that didn't get to heal, so that the dysfunction stops with them, and what comes after them is able to move on without the same dysfunction.
I, Breaking generational curses, that's actually part of what I call my ministry. But I actually would like to talk about that. So the concept is that if you heal yourself, your grandmother's lineage, your family lineage is healed. And I think sometimes that's a little too esoteric. I think sometimes I don't like to give false hope when it comes to healing. You can get yourself right. Your kids and your grandbabies are healed. You're not really breaking generational curses. It's stopping with you. What about your children? Like right now, my daughter's pregnant with twin granddaughters. I'm still alive. I still got a lot of work to do. Breaking generational curses for me is being the grandfather I didn't have. And so I could say healing is a continual process, but I don't know if I healed my ancestors. I'm careful with saying that. With saying that. Because I consider myself an ancestral healer. I'm breaking curses, but I don't know if I healed all those after me. Maybe that's a little too esoteric, you know?
Yeah.
Just
Because even in the like offspring idea, the way that I've kind of balanced it for my own understanding is that whatever you create carries the record of who you are when you create it. The person you were at that time is who got passed on. So if you create after your healing, what was created because you're a different person at that point will carry
hmm,
on who you are at that moment rather than who you may have been in the past. So that which is the offspring is always the byproduct of whoever the parents were in the moment that they were conceived, the moment they were pushed out. So even that goes into making it easier. But oftentimes this breaking of generational curses is it might take a few generations to do it right for it to be completely snuffed out, to completely kill the dysfunction. Because I have a very similar story where like I had to like my parents, like my mom, she started going through a process of healing herself and helping herself, which opened up the right atmosphere for me to start dealing with myself. Now, as an adult, what she got going on ain't got nothing to do with what I got going on. As a kid, yeah, because that was the supreme authority in the house at the time. Whatever they carried, my mom and dad carried when they made me, I carried all that up until we stopped carrying that. But since I've been going on a process of healing and dealing with my genetics, there's a bunch of stuff I know that my kids, whenever I decide to have kids, won't carry because it's not genetic.
okay. Hmm.
Now, I even believe that some things that people consider genetic aren't even genetic. It's just learned behavior they keep passing on. In that I
Like a
learned this
poverty
from,
mindset? Would you say a
yes,
poverty? Okay.
where it's like, this is the way grandmama did it. This is the way my mama did it. This is the way I'm going to do it. And I'm trying to teach you to do it. And it's like, that ain't work for none of y'all. We need to do something different.
Yeah, we need to stop saying that that's tradition because tradition are passing on things that work, and the things that don't work, we get rid of. That's the tradition I'm part of.
Yeah. Heavy stuff.
And that
Yeah.
goes to beating children. Did we get that from slavery, or did we ever lay hands on our children to reinforce a lesson? Some people believe, hey, my mama beat me, I'm gonna beat my kids. Some people say it didn't work for me, and I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah. Because that is something you notice that one of my favorite John Wesley quotes. He said, "What one generation tolerates, the next one will embrace." Pretty much showing that the byproduct of the current generation will always show itself in the next generation. Um, whatever, like the future is always the child of the present. The present it all is always the offspring of the past, in that they create each other. So what let's just say my parents' generation didn't like about my grandparents' generation, they altered it in some way. Either they tried to do it exactly the way that they saw it, or they tried to tweak it because they didn't like it. Same
Right.
for the generation before. Either they liked it enough or submitted to it enough, because some of them submitted to it and still hated it because they just thought that's how life worked.
Yes, sir. Yes,
And
sir.
that's something I can say that I like about like my age bracket is that a lot of us are doing away with tradition as a whole and just kind of create it's just this big open space kind of. That's one of the negatives, but it's causing people to break away from some of the dysfunctional traditions that have been passing on generation after generation.
I think maybe that is tradition, and we don't want to call it that because I'm pretty sure there's always. I believe in cycles, and we teach in cycles, and there's always came a time where we say, "Man, get rid of everything and let's start from scratch."
Yeah,
But even when you start from scratch, you start from something. You know what you don't want, and so you build the opposite, which is a part of our teachings. Do the opposite of what you don't want. So we've been through this. Now we know we want this. Let's build it. We know we don't want books and theology or gods to go together because we've been through it. Don't go together. God has to be something consistent, something that everybody has access to. That's what we started with, but we have to break it down and go back to what you have, which is what's right in front of you. All human beings live on Earth. It's necessary for us to get along. We come in different shades. How can we respect each other and get along? You know, which is what,
yeah,
yes, sir. Which is what we taught, and which what we're getting back to. So I would say it's tradition.
yeah. I like that clean slate because, like you mentioned, like a lot of people now are completely against the idea of whooping kids. Why is that? Most of us got whooped growing up.
And it didn't work.
Not even that. A lot of us were smart enough. I always like I've told like some people this. I was like, no, you whoop dummies. You don't whoop smart kids. They know better. A whooping ain't gonna change their mind. You
Yeah,
have to have a decent you have to have a conversation with them. I'm like, you think you're raising a dummy? No. Okay, then stop hitting them.
yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of it is punishment. It's I'm gonna beat your butt now because you did what I told you not to do. It's not
Yeah,
reinforcing the lesson. Let me talk to you. Now I gotta hit you once so it can sting so you can remember. It's punching you every time I say something. I told you not to. You're taking your anger out on a child. You're traumatizing this kid. This is in no way good. And we're just repeating what was done to us. That wasn't done to me. I went away, to
yeah,
home when I was 9, but I met kids who were traumatized and who were beaten, and boy, were they angry for a long time, and boy,
yeah.
did they take that out on anybody they could get their hands on to later on in life.
Because it's a big difference between discipline and revenge. At some point, it's just getting revenge. You made me mad. You messed up my day. I'm finna mess your day up.
Yeah, and you'll say that. You hear that. Oh boy, you better go inside, Rondell. You pissed mama off. And it's just because you messed up her day. There's no morality behind it. The
It's not even a
morality is
lesson to be learned.
no lesson to be learned. Don't piss mama off. That don't translate into the work world. I meet people at work and they want to fight over things, and I'm like, you're not in threat. You're not. There's no reason to fight at work unless somebody's personally harming you. You can't beat somebody up because you're mad at them. That's not the way the world works.
It's not a good reason.
It's not a good reason. You
But
probably
if
learned that
you,
at home.
yeah, but that's what I was finna say. If you grew up and being angry was a reason to touch somebody, then hey, that's something you were taught.
Yeah. And now you're a grown person, 250 pounds, 3 kids and a day job, and you think that's okay.
Yeah.
Don't add up.
Even goes into the concept like something that I've realized is that people who are there's this parallel I found behind people who are easily offended and people who are heavy on respect. In that people who need to be respected oftentimes find themselves feeling disrespected, therefore being angry, upset quite often taking things way too personal or taking things because once you stand on it like that, it creates this circle of, oh no, I can't let that slide. And then it creates a list of a bunch of things that can't be you can't let slide.
And what they mean to you, right? This means this and that means that.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, that's disrespectful. Well, now we got a long list of things that's classified as disrespectful, which means because that's your big point, you finna give it the most emotional reaction ever rather than rational. Does it actually take that? No, but it's disrespectful. Maybe. But does it actually take that to solve the problem? No. Okay, let's back up.
Yeah. I go back to true and kind. I use that throughout the day. Is it true? Is it kind? I can let it go. Does it make sense? Is that something I would tell a friend or a loved one? Chances are it's not. Especially at work, because we have so many different type of personalities that are forced to be together for usually more than 8 hours. Oh man.
Yeah. I heard somebody say before that like they had us in separate classes for a reason when we was in kids and now we all work together now.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, for hours, and they pay us wages that we're not happy with. So, you know, I have a book I'm working on, and I gotta leave to work soon. I'll at least get ready. But
Yeah.
I got a book. I'm not gonna say the title or the name, but it starts with me getting up in the morning and coming up with an excuse not to call off for work, not to call off. An excuse why I shouldn't call it off. Because how many days I've called off? Because I was not motivated to go to work. There's a lot of people I didn't like, and I wanted to say I want to say various things to them, and I had to allow my mind to go to some of the worst points of my life to give myself motivation to jump in my car and to go to work that morning. Um, and the book is surrounding a time I was stabbed. I was stabbed twice in my other lifetimes, and I was looking out the window, and I couldn't find anything to be happy about. It was really sad, and I'm sitting there, and the coffee's brewing. My mind is like, you could just take the day off and go to the park and chill out. My mind was saying, no, you can't. You need to go to work. You have bills to pay. Why should you go to work? And my mind said, you survived being stabbed twice. Shouldn't you be happy with that? And I sat down and I laughed a little bit to myself. And I said, damn, that's some real crap you just told yourself. Like, you could have died from a rusty blade. Like, when you got stabbed at, people die from rusty knives. Often, they get infection in their blood. And as I started talking to myself, I started getting up. I made my coffee and I started getting dressed. I felt good that I survived some of the worst stuff in the world. And that's the motivation I needed to go to this job I really didn't like, but it gave me a positive spin on today. And I said, that's a form of gratitude. Is to be able to realize how far, how horrible, how low down and dirty you were or got circumstances you got yourself into. And now, you're a pretty upstanding, decent person. You're not where you want to be. But to find gratitude from the worst, from the dumps, sometimes is the best.
Yeah. So I got pretty much one more question for you before we wrap up.
Yeah.
What does your spiritual engagement look like on a personal level? Like, how do you commune with the divine? How do you stay in sync? How do you stay in the zone?
Um, a lot of it has to do with not allowing. I think depression in my childhood experience has became something I have to learn from. Um, Gratitude and being thankful that I found a way to treat myself, to treat my depression without having to really get on medication. Um, when I commune with the divine, it's like a secret within my soul. It's like I'm able to shut everything out that I think that it's important, and it's like a whisper that I'm important and that I'm on path to my purpose. And it really has a lot to do with in meditation and bumping into people and having experiences, having conversations with someone like you. It's a different part of my soul that brings joy, not a temporary pleasure, but later on I'm thinking I got to express myself today. Even if he scraps the interview, you know, I got to share something inside, and I know he's seen it, and I've seen it. Maybe somebody else will see it. Um, I commune with the divine through action. through being beautiful from the heart.
That's great. So, in closing, do you have any like final thoughts that you'd have for anyone who might watch this video?
Uh, when I was in the church and I was a minister, I met more people who believed that God wasn't on their side and they had messed up and that they were unforgivable. And it's a fact that if you woke up this morning, you have breath, and you can get up. If you woke up and you have breath and consciousness, the force, the source called God is still with you, through you. You're not a mistake. You're not out of time. You're not running late. You're right on time. You were born with everything you need. Be compassionate with yourself. Be your best friend.
That's great. So, do you have any places where people can connect with you? You have any websites or anything?
I really don't at the moment, and I need to, but it's definitely coming up soon. I'm hoping that when I do, you'll have me on your show, and I can launch something and engage minds and help people out, and continue on my purpose path.
Yeah, and let me know when your book come out because I'll advertise it for you.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna need some help, but definitely.
Well, that's great. Well, this concludes this episode of The Inner. Again, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, y'all, this has been a blessing. Leave in the comments if there's anyone else that y'all would like for me to have on my show. Y'all be blessed. Later.
Peace.